We do things for fun that we think are fun and could potentially make money, but how do we actually have wealth? Index funds.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammy and Michelle.
For most of this year, I didn't work. A few months ago, I started working as a front desk receptionist at the gym, where I make $250 every 2 weeks.
Not to mention, Sammy, everybody in your family gets a free gym pass.
The perks are amazing. I spent $55,000 this year. And I made $111,000 this year. 111. 6 figures, and there's nothing sexy about it.
First off, angel numbers are always sexy. But if you're wondering why the math isn't mathing, Sammy and I are so excited about this episode because we are going to dive into how Sammy did that, how learning these simple personal finance tools helped us build wealth, go from women who, to be honest, maybe had good jobs, but didn't really know what to do with our money, to actually being able to buy freedom, buy the opportunity to do things that excite us. And it wasn't some crazy complicated thing. It was just a few simple pieces of knowledge that throughout the 4 years of this podcast, we've also been able to share with other people and hear how they have positively affected their life as well. So let's get into it, Sammy. But first, Sammy, one of the beautiful things that I was able to do because of these wonderful personal finance tips is start to do more creative projects online. I obviously started this podcast with you. I write online. I got to work with different creative people through my writing program. And now I'm so excited to share that if you want to work one-on-one with me for writing coaching, I would love to hear from you. We'll share the link in our show notes, but basically, if you're thinking you want to build a consistent writing habit by publishing online, specifically nonfiction essays, if you want help editing and refining your craft, if you want to grow and build your audience, I would love to work with you. If this is something that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check the link in our show notes, and you can get started partnering with me. Back to our topic, Sammy.
This is not financial advice.
I'm so excited about this. I really, really passionately believe that for a lot of people, when it comes to building wealth, a main blocker is the knowledge. I know I felt like it had to be super complicated or there was some big secret out there that I was missing. And I was pleasantly relieved to find out it actually doesn't have to be that complicated.
I completely agree, Michelle. I love this because once you figure out how to build wealth, you can put that on the back burner. That doesn't have to become the priority of your life. You can actually start doing the things you want to do with your time because you know how to build wealth and the steps are quite simple. Chris Hogan has a book called Everyday Millionaires, where he interviews many millionaires in the United States, and he found that over 70% of them say that people can become a millionaire by being disciplined and responsible, avoiding debt, and investing regularly. And I love this because I have found that that is a strategy that I use to build most of my wealth as well. And the best thing is, it's really not that hard once you figure it out.
It's so true, Sammy. It's so interesting too, because these tips that we're sharing, as soon as you start looking at the different financial gurus or coaches out there, the ones that are just giving away information for free and not necessarily trying to convince you of some crazy hack, you'll see that there is a consistent theme. And it is a lot about avoiding debt or getting out of debt, saving money, investing money, and just being a little bit more cognizant of where your dollars are going. And so Sammy and I are excited to share those tips today because we truly think that by implementing this, you can make a huge pivot in building your own wealth.
Step 1, the most important and least sexy step of all, saving money.
Oh yeah, sounds obvious. Not necessarily easy. No matter where you fall, whether you feel like you don't have enough income or you're the highest earner, saving money is actually the difference between people who build wealth and those who do not. You can make a ton of money and spend it all and build zero wealth.
Absolutely, Michelle. Even today, when I have a solid financial foundation, saving money can make a huge difference in my life because that is money that can otherwise continue to be invested. When it comes to saving money, the biggest thing to start with is your emergency fund. I remember when I first started saving money and I opened up my accounts and I made it so that my paycheck went into these accounts. I decided to have an emergency fund and I put about $250 from every paycheck into that account. And I remember looking at how much money I wanted to have in that account and seeing how long it would take to get there. And it was going to take years. I was feeling really disheartened by this because I'm like, I wanted an emergency fund tomorrow. Like, I don't want this to take years. But the crazy thing is life happens so quickly. Like that one day that you take time to actually start investing towards your emergency fund is going to be so crucial when you wake up, it's 18 months later and you have the amount that you want to have in your emergency fund. It will create a sense of safety that will make you feel secure and make you know that you can handle challenges that might pop up.
It's so true, Sammy. And this, I think, is a big shift for people. I love what you shared there about almost the fear around how long it takes potentially to build an emergency fund. And this can vary for every single person. It varies how much money you can contribute monthly. Maybe it's only a little bit of your paycheck. But when you can shift to saving even a little bit so that you have eventually 3 to 6 months worth of money saved up that you can use if something bad happens, like you lose your job or an unexpected payment happens, then that ends up building you the financial security and financial foundation just to have the mental space to even consider any of these other steps. Unexpected expenses can really not only set you back, obviously, financially, but also just make you feel worse about your financial situation.
A big part of saving money is tracking your spending. Anytime I talk to people about tracking their spending, they already feel like they're tracking their spending. They already feel like they have a sense of where their money's going. They take a look at their credit card statements occasionally, and I can even fall into that sometimes. But I will tell you that once I start manually tracking my spending again, manually putting in every expense for the week into a spreadsheet, it completely changes the way I approach spending money. For the positive, because all those things that I don't waste unnecessary money on is freedom in the future. Like all the aspects of building wealth that we're going to share today, they are all incremental. Maybe it doesn't feel so important that you're saving $20 here or there one day. But the truth is, when you change your habits to kind of live a little bit more within your means, to live with what you need, but not with all these things that you don't even want, it will make a huge difference in 5 years or 10 years. It doesn't feel big today, but it makes a big difference tomorrow. And tracking your spending is the way to do it.
I want to emphasize too, Sammy, the difference between tracking your spending versus setting up a budget. Really quick, a lot of people find that they'll set a budget for themselves. It ends up being just random numbers you choose, and then they overshoot it. They feel bad about it. You just feel bad about your money. Tracking your spending, ironically, I find I actually feel a lot better about than I think I would, because it actually shows me where each of my dollars are going, and I can just start to be cognizant of whether or not those things align with my money. If I'm spending a ton of money eating out by myself instead of cooking, I like cooking. I don't mind cooking healthy meals for myself. I can make little tweaks. But if I'm spending money on, say, gifts for my friends, that's something I do value, and I don't mind seeing my dollars go there. So tracking your spending is nice because it makes you cognizant of how you're spending your money. You actually look at how you're spending your money, and you can start just naturally making changes, which I find to be a lot more helpful to people than trying to budget without even understanding where your money is going.
The next step in building wealth is investing your money.
Sammy, I'm so excited we're talking about investing your money today because I remember when I was young, in my early 20s, and I was trying to figure out how to spend my money, how to invest my money, I thought it had to be, there was some secret out there. I would honestly search and search, and everything was like, buy these individual stocks, and you have to read the S1 reports and really understand the company and do all this research. And actually, after that, it's still a crapshoot. Like, I was like, what? It feels like investing my money is a whole nother skill I need to learn. And I learned a lesson the hard way when I was seeing somebody who told me off the cuff that they had done all this research on marijuana stocks. This was back in the heyday. Marijuana was about to be legalized in Canada. And oh my gosh, there's going to be so much opportunity for marijuana growing companies. And I told Sammy this, and she said, does this person smoke too much pot? And I was like, in hindsight, yes. And just like they set their marijuana leaves on fire, I invested stock money into these stocks. I think I actually bought at the top of the market. I kid you not. I think maybe 8 years later, I finally sold them for pennies on the dollar. It was the worst investment I have ever made. Luckily, I still saw it as money that I could just play with and burn, but it taught me an important lesson, which was do not just randomly put your money on whatever seems hot and sexy in the moment. Investing doesn't have to be that complicated. It's actually so much more simple, and I'm happy we found this other way.
And the other way is broad-based index funds.
What is an index fund, Sammy?
An index fund is the least sexy investment of all time. It is a fund, a stock, that contains a little portion of each of the top 500, sometimes top 1,000 companies in the United States of America. And regularly, they go through these funds to change them to match the top companies in the United States. They are cheap because they really don't involve a lot of thinking. The person who's managing the fund is literally just following the top companies.
Sammy, I would like to clarify. You said the funds are cheap. I think what you mean is that the expenses you have to pay are cheap.
Exactly. Because they're not quotation actively managed, meaning somebody has to really work hard to select what goes into the stock. These funds typically have low expense ratios or fees, less than 1%, less than 0.7%. Sometimes, like the Fidelity Index Fund, they have no fees at all. And that is a great thing because you're making money without having to then pay a large fee on that investment. And interestingly enough, these index funds in the long term actually regularly do better than most of these quotation actively managed funds anyway. So you're saving money and you're doing the thing that statistically in the long term actually does better.
My favorite part, Sammy, is there's also no guessing. These are the top companies, in our case, the United States. If a company starts to tank, they will move it out of the top 500 companies. So it's not like you are dependent on one stock, taking a risk, thinking, is this going to be the next Apple stock or the next Google stock? And are those stocks going to continue to do well? No, those are already built in. They're companies, they're doing well. They're in these index funds. You don't have to depend on one or two doing well and getting lucky. You are just mimicking the market.
And something to keep in mind about index funds. They match the market of the United States. So over the long term, especially when you're looking over a 10, 15-year period, they go up. But in the short term, sometimes the economy goes down. Sometimes the economy can go down for a year. There have been periods of time where the economy goes down for 10 years. These are investments for the long term. If you're looking at a greater than 10 to 15-year period of time, these investments over time have always gone up. Of course, there is a black swan possibility that the United States could just crash forever, in which case we probably have bigger problems and other investments are probably also not doing well.
My marijuana stocks aren't going to save me then. Exactly, Sammy. And the truth is, right, we're always comparing against what else is out there. So I think this is so important in a stage where meme stocks are very popular, where people will just decide on Reddit that they want to run up a stock price, where crypto, when we're recording this, is at a high, but God knows tomorrow it could be at a low. I understand why it's sexy to want to hop into those, where you want to FOMO in, fear of missing out. Everybody's making money on crypto today. Let me get in late into the market. And what I learned in my marijuana stock situation, which is a lesson I'm so happy I learned at the level that I did, is that is the equivalent to gambling, okay? You can do it. I'm not telling you how you should spend your money, but I'm also not telling you whether or not you should go put your money on Red in Las Vegas and put your savings there and hope for the best. I don't know, maybe it'll work, but you're gambling. Gambling is not what we encourage here. We're trying to help you build wealth over the long term, and we'll share the resources here that actually mention specific stocks that you can look into, because I think that's the hard part too. Index funds can still feel general. There are places in the FI community where people actually all consistently support the same ones. Again, not financial advice. This is an entertainment podcast, but you should entertain yourself by looking into that.
And the funny thing, Michelle, is index funds, you don't hear about them as much as you hear about all these other things, because these other things sound cool. They sound sexier. They sound like you're going to get rich quick. And that's what everybody wants, is to get rich quick, when statistically, the millionaires in the United States are made by getting rich slowly. And it's really not that slow, people. Once you get into it, it's really not that slow. It's actually quite sexy. But you kind of have to be participating in it to see the sexiness about it. It's like a Honda Accord.
Sammy, I'm so happy we're talking about this, because this brings us to our final point, which, if you are interested in figuring out how to build wealth, I want to emphasize that such an important thing that we're trying to do here is just buy you freedom in your life. First, we want to buy you security so that you feel comfortable, you're meeting your basic needs. We want to buy you the opportunity to know that you can actually expand your wealth. And then we want you to also start thinking about your financial independence number. We want to talk about how being aware of communities like the Financial Independent and FIRE, Financial Independent Retire Early communities, are so helpful. These are not backed by companies. These are just like random people like us who just found this out and are so excited that there's a simple path to wealth.
It's funny. Michelle and I were just talking today about how so many of the people we meet who are doing the things that they love, whether that's writing, whether that's putting out courses on topics that they love,
entrepreneurship, real estate, drop shipping, crypto.
Some of the people doing these things will often be like, no, I actually just like doing this for fun. And I'm really glad I have my index funds to make my wealth for me.
Yes. That's the surprising thing.
That's what Michelle and I are doing here. We have a podcast. Michelle writes, we do things for fun that we think are fun and could potentially make money. But how do we actually have wealth? Index funds. Saving our money and index funds. That is how we actually have money.
Yeah, we bought ourselves freedom and the ability to just enjoy what we're doing in our lives. We can build new skills. We can take the time to do those things. We're young. We're not necessarily focused on retiring at this moment.
I'm thinking about selling some crystals because I like crystals and I think it could be fun. But what's making my money is index funds.
Yeah, do not be confused. You can definitely, once you get yourself to a consistent space with wealth, do what you want, start your own business, all of those things. But we want to help you mitigate risk up until that point so that you actually have money that's growing in some place like an index fund.
Some important things to know while you're accumulating wealth is your financial independence number. This is a number that you reach that essentially tells you that you're retired, that you no longer have to rely on work or W-2 money coming in for income, because you have saved enough money such that if you withdraw 4% of that every year, you will still, over the long term, increase and have enough money for the rest of your life based on the Trinity study.
Saved and invested your money.
You have saved and invested enough of your money such that you will have enough if you withdraw 4% of your income every year. We'll link to the Trinity study where this number comes from so that you can look and learn more about it yourself. But the great thing about knowing this number, for example, if you spend $60,000 a year, your FI number is the 60,000 times 25, which is $1 million. So in that person's case, $1 million would be their retirement number. When you know that number, you know where you're at. You know that when you have $100,000, you're 10% of the way there. When you have $500,000, you're halfway there. Although, because of compound interest, that first $100,000 is way harder than going from $500 to $600. But it just gives you a benchmark number to know how far along your path you are. Because otherwise, sometimes it can feel like you're saving money and you don't know how much you need and you really don't know what that means. That number means a lot in regards to your freedom.
Takeaways.
Takeaways for this episode. Yeah, girls. Sammy and Michelle are here to tell you in our entertaining podcast that there is a way for you to build wealth. And it is not as complicated as you would think it needs to be.
First, save money. Save up an emergency fund. Track your expenses. Next, invest money. We recommend broad-based index funds and try to avoid high-risk investments, or at least avoid putting a large portion of your money into these high-risk investments. And 3, know your numbers. What's your financial independence number? What's the number where you know that you have enough to be, essentially, financially retired? Michelle and I are so passionate about this because this is how we have built our wealth, and we have actually built some freedom for ourselves. And knowing these numbers, knowing the framework, knowing the structure, that is what makes it easy. It's what makes it exciting for us to get $5,000 doing a job and then put that into an index fund because we know what that means and we've seen it grow over time. It's not sexy. In normal conversation, maybe we're not talking about it, but it is the most liberating thing that we have found for ourselves.
It's funny now that we've attracted friends into our lives who are doing similar things. We'll just have like casual moments where we're like, yep, that's why I put my money into index funds. Like we're talking about building wealth in a way that is so simple and almost like a throwaway thought. But when I was starting to work and I started to have a little bit of extra money, I really had absolutely no idea that any of this existed. And that's why it's important to Sammy and I to share it, because we think it's accessible information to people at any stage in their financial journey, but sometimes we just don't know where to look to find it. And we just need one person to point us in the right direction.
Community time.
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time. Sammy, I'm so excited. India, who took my sabbatical course, was texting me, and she mentioned that she loved our sabbatical episode. She's about to go on her own sabbatical and travel the world. She has a great YouTube channel. We'll link it in our show notes. She's awesome, and I really appreciate it. And she gave us some great suggestions of what she's thinking about when planning her own personal finances. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to Arul Gupta. He said, I'm a big fan of your podcast. I left my tech job last year to build a manifestation app, and I'm now exploring starting my own podcast and newsletter. I love that. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast and for letting us know. We'd love to hear from you. BuildAWealthySpirit.com. You can go to our newsletter and leave us a comment, or you can shoot us an email. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on these personal finance tips, and if there's anything else that helped you on your journey. Or if you already knew this and it's been helping you, share your wins. I think we don't talk enough about how much this has helped all of us.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rule book and rethink the status quo.